So thank you so much for having me here today. I'm talking to you about banishing your robot brain. So we have this tendency to think about our brain as a machine, and that mindset is very limiting. Our brain is super flexible and adaptable and can do way more than a machine ever could. So in order to help you understand where this idea of the brain as a machine has come from, I'm going to take you on a journey to the past. So when psychology first became a science, there wasn't a very good way to study the brain because there wasn't the imaging technology that we have today. So there was a lot of myth surrounding the brain, and that makes it really hard to scientifically study it because science needs things that are observable and measurable in order to really understand them. So and some of that kind of mythology even carries through to today. So this is kind of a funny image of what's supposed to be a teenage brain and all of the things that teenagers are obsessed with, like procrastinating and Facebook. Though maybe that should say TikTok nowadays, Xbox and money and pizza and everything like that. And obviously this is not very scientific. So what some psychologists did to overcome this was they just ignored the brain. That was one solution. And they studied behaviors instead. And from that, we get these conditioning. And if you pair something with a behavior, you can actually change the behavior. If you reward or punish an animal or a person for doing something, you're going to change the behavior. And that's really, really useful, except it ignores the most important part, which is the brain, and what's going on inside the brain, and the thought process, and why these behaviors are happening. So the computer gave a really simple way of studying the brain in a more scientific way. It was a comparison, something that could be much more easily understood and help understand how the brain might be working. But the problem is that a machine is very limited. So if a machine has a worn out part, that part either needs to be replaced or the machine needs to be replaced. And our brain's not like that. Our brain is a flexible organ that can change and adapt, and is actually designed to learn and to grow and to change. And to just help you understand how pervasive this kind of idea is and why it's so important for us to shift our mindset, I wanted to share with you a personal story. So my 5-year-old son was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and I sat with the doctor as the doctor explained to me that my son was missing his brake fluid in his brain. And this is a picture of my son here. And we needed to top up his brake fluid. And he talked us through a bunch of different medications that he said could do that. But the whole time I'm sitting there going, I know quite a bit about the brain, and my son doesn't have a brake fluid valve that I can top up. And ADHD is obviously way more complex than that. So this comparison to a machine, it might make things a little bit simpler, but it simplifies them too much because we can't top up someone's brain with like brake fluid or happiness or something like that. So I want you to start thinking about your brain as a community of specialized parts that work together to become something that is more than the sum of their parts. And in order to make this community a little bit more similar to the brain, we're going to get a little bit sci-fi, and we're going to go on a space journey because we have very limited resources in our brain and in our body. And so I wanted to kind of reflect that. So on this space mission, we have just the resources and individuals we need to succeed on this mission. But NASA is going to send 2 spaceships, each with an identical crew. So each spaceship is going to have a doctor, a teacher, a farmer, a firefighter, policeman, everyone that you need to succeed. But each individual is a little bit different from each other. So even though you have 2 doctors on the mission, one on each spaceship, each one's going to have a bit of a different specialization. So one might be a general practitioner, while the other one's a surgeon. And those 2 individuals are going to have to work together to make sure that the community thrives, and to make sure that they meet all the medical needs of the community. And this is a reflection of the brain, because the brain has two identical parts, or mostly identical, two identical halves, but each half doesn't do the exact same thing. Different sides specialize in different areas. So even though we have two halves, they're both really important, and they both need to work together to help us thrive. So with these two teams working together, you're able to build this wonderful, thriving colony. And even if some normal challenges come up in life, like one of your team members sprains an ankle or gets the flu, you probably won't notice it at the community level, because you have other individuals who can step into their place or help out or creatively come up with solutions. Unless something unexpected happens, like the aliens attack, in which case, well, you're going to have a much bigger problem to deal with. And you might lose some of those limited resources you started with. You might even lose a member of your community. And we don't have extras. So that's a big problem. But it's not like you're a machine with a broken part. That you're a community, you're a group of specialized parts that can work together to overcome these challenges, using creativity and innovation to rebuild and to thrive, even in the face of the greatest challenge. So I want to challenge you to banish your robot brain, because you are not a machine with broken parts or worn out parts getting rusty. You are a community of specialized brain regions, and when the community works together, there's nothing that it can't achieve. Thank you so much for having me.